Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast. We are in episode 21. Justin, how you doing today, brother?
Fantastic. Long day at work, but I'm feeling great.
So we always try to do like these milestone episodes where we get like quality interviews, or like last week where we had our 20th episode. So we did like a listener Q&A where people were able to ask questions on social media and we answered them. Well, today we kind of have another, I don't want to say abnormal episode, but another specialty episode because we have a very special guest on our show today.
Yeah.
So this guest, and I've kind of alluded to it a little bit on social media, talked briefly about it, and I think we mentioned it on the last podcast that we had somebody very special on. I am welcoming to the show today a friend of mine who Justin has not officially met yet, other than just, quick shoot the breeze dialogue. We are welcoming on the show a pound for pound, one of the greatest powerlifters to ever live. He has multiple world records at the 148 weight class and the squat, the bench, the deadlift, so all three powerlifting movements. He has an elite total, which he'll get into what that means to total elite. It's kind of like the gold medal of powerlifting at 148. His highest meet total was 1,470 pounds, which combines the bench, the squat, and the deadlift. He has the all-time drug-tested world record of a 579 squat at 148. And his in the gym PRs, so personal records for those of you who are unfamiliar with that acronym, his gym PRs are 625 squat, a 380 pound bench, and a 590 pound deadlift. So without further ado, we will welcome to the show Josh Marosi. So Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Charlie. Thank you guys for inviting me on tonight. I feel really privileged and honored to be here. I appreciate, that very generous introduction, but I think you'll speak more to my accolades tonight than I will.
So before before we did this and started recording, we kind of just talked very briefly and gave a quick rundown to Josh about how things were going to go. And I told Justin, I said, Josh is not going to be very braggadocious, to put it lightly, about all of his accomplishments and stuff. And I even apologized to Josh and said, hey, sorry, I got to build you up a little bit, because he kind of epitomizes humility. And you've been like that ever since I've known you, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, the way I was raised with, sports and everything else I did. My parents always taught me, to be humble and be respectful. And I try to carry myself that way, because I think that's how a person should carry themselves. And I want other people to see that, so that they kind of adopt that into their own lifestyle as well.
Dude, there's certainly like a level of consistency here. Justin, have you noticed that pretty much every person we've had on, that's obviously there's all successful, which is, why they're
right
quality guests for the show. Have you noticed that every single one of them has given the utmost credit to their parents?
Yeah, family and their parents, and
yeah,
humble. I mean, you literally took it out of the words out of my mouth. I was getting ready to like interrupt you and say the same thing. It's weird, but it's not at the same time. I feel like, this being a successful driven podcast, and wanting to shed light on people that are successful, humble and a good upbringing just goes hand in hand with success.
Yeah, no doubt. So it's pretty cool to hear you mention your parents and thank your family and your support system, Josh, because we've done full episodes talking about how important it is, especially in, where you are in an individualized sport, so to speak, like bodybuilding for myself, or, triathlon training, 5K, and like distance running and endurance sports like Justin, or even with yourself, like powerlifting. You look at it at surface value and think, oh, this is kind of an individual journey, but like you cannot be successful if you go at it alone.
No, absolutely not. And, speaking of the things that I've done with my life and the accomplishments that I've made, the things that my parents have done for both my sisters and myself growing up, minimum tenfold of anything that I've done, they have gone far, far beyond, just to be great parents, provide for us, give us anything we could ever need, growing up. I hope to be like them when I'm a parent someday.
No doubt. So let's start there. You said when you were growing up. So vaguely for our listeners, I kind of gave the rundown of the accomplishments and all that, but what happened before the accomplishments? Like, who is Josh Marosi? Not the powerlifter, but the person. Just kind of give us a journey about, how your childhood started and how you kind of transitioned your way up to the point where you're at now.
Sure. Yeah. So, Josh Marosi is not, one of these fairy tale people or sports stars or anything like that. He's, average guy from a small town in Northern Panhandle, West Virginia. Grew up, playing sports like baseball, track, wrestling. And then, my older years, I played football, continued to wrestle, tried soccer, wasn't the best at it. So kind of, steered away from that. Went to college at WVU, graduated with a computer engineering degree. And today I'm working for a company that's giving me the opportunity to learn, AWS cloud computing services. So I've worked hard to get where I am, but I have had so many people help me along the way. And, not just my parents, but my employer right now is giving me an incredible opportunity. So everybody that I come into contact with has helped my life, and I give all the credit of anything that I do to them.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And you wonder if maybe, and again, I got to stroke your ego a little bit. You have to wonder too, when a person constantly is surrounded with opportunity, if that's not necessarily just an instance of luck, or if there's a pattern developing there behind the type of person that you are and the type of people that you surround yourself with,
Yeah, for sure. And I think everything that happens to you in life, regardless of circumstance, it's all for a reason. If it's, undesirable at the time, like something you didn't want to happen, the way I think about setbacks or things like that is it's God redirecting you to the path that, he intends for you. So I try to look at drawbacks or any kind of setbacks or shortcomings or anything like that happens to me in my life as a redirection to a new opportunity.
Awesome.
I think that's kind of helped me, to do the things that I've done and get where I am today.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and we've spoke on previous episodes, Justin and I have, about how you can look at those instances of fallback as like opportunities, and they're going to, it's like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type of cliche. But at the same time, you have to kind of at least mention the fact that it's very difficult to say that when you're in the downstage of something. Like, life is full of like chutes and ladders, and when you're going and falling down the chute, it's very, very difficult to be that level-headed and say, oh, this is going to make me better in the long run.
Absolutely.
Right. I 100% agree with that. And it's like you said, it is really difficult to recognize in the moment whenever, either a setback or some kind of, failure or anything like that happens to you. It's really hard to, kind of wade through the dirt and the clouds to see that this is, an actually a blessing in disguise. And it's not, the be all end all. Something good is going to come out of a bad situation.
Yeah, it typically does in my experience. And then sometimes it takes a long time for that good to come and manifest itself. Sometimes a bad situation, you'll understand the why, a week later. Sometimes it'll take a month, sometimes it'll take years, other times it'll take decades to understand why trauma or negative circumstances kind of surrounded you for a while. But eventually the reason will come to you. It takes a long time, but it'll come.
It's almost like success is partnered with patience.
Oh, yeah, you're not kidding. So let's piggyback off that, Justin. Let's work into the whole powerlifting realm here.
Yeah. So I had a question. It was kind of just a thought, really. Like, when you started, so you said you played sports throughout like your childhood and all your life, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
So when you started into like the world of fitness, kind of, did it start when you were playing like football or baseball or whatever like your main sport was, or was it after like school?
For me, it was more like extracurricular. I'd always been, a fairly athletic kid. Like I said, I played a myriad of different sports, so I wasn't, a specialist in one. I was more jack of all and master of none. But I remember distinctly whenever I first started getting interested in fitness, it was 7th grade over the summer. I was just, growing up, I was never very tall, not really, big built dude. And I was tired of, just being the little guy on the football team. And so summer of 7th grade, I actually bought the P90X workout system. I think it was from Beachbody or something like that. And I kind of like locked myself away all summer. And I was like, this is going to be, where I transform. And I, stuck to that. It was a 90-day program. And I came back and, my friends, I hung out with my closest friends, but people that I just played sports with, when I came back the next year, they were like, holy crap, like what happened to you? Like, what did you do to yourself? And that kind of, that was kind of a catalyst to me saying, okay, this is something that I want to continue with. Like, this is something that other people are recognizing me for. And it feels good to, have this sense of accomplishment for the hard work that I'm putting in. And then from there, transitioned into asking some buddies of mine that were older than me that already were lifting and, hey, can you guys kind of show me the ropes and kind of help me get started so that I can, develop myself and then later on down the road, help others that are in my situation right now.
So you kind of went and actively sought out the whole fitness thing.
Right. Like we, everybody has like the coaches that'll, have you do calisthenics or weightlifting or stuff like that. But for me, it was never anything that stemmed from a particular sport. It was just me wanting to, see what I could do with my body and like, see what I was able to accomplish with it.
It's pretty crazy how you started so young too, because like I can't speak to other people's experiences, but I know me personally when because I didn't start weight training until I was in 8th grade, and I went to the private school and was going to the public school for high school because the nearest private school was quite a drive away, so it wouldn't be feasible with all the sports I played. So I was getting bused from, my little Catholic school full of 20 kids in a class. And after school, I was getting bused to the big high school where we have, like 400 kids a class. And I was lifting with the football team because I was going to be an incoming freshman the next year. And I remember I was intimidated beyond belief, number one. And number two, I was very skinny and weak. So when you compound those two together, I immediately was like against lifting. Like I was so resistant initially. And I was like, I hate this. I don't like it. Like I'm not strong. I'm not going to be strong. And I would go to workouts just because it was kind of an understanding that that's just what you did. You can't skip workouts. If you want to be a part of the team, you're always committed. Again, that's a testament to my parents, much like you spoke to. And when I started lifting, it was a very, very long and arduous road to get to the point where I actually enjoyed it. I don't even think that I started liking it until about 10th grade. And, you said you were getting interested in training. Now, obviously, training takes on a different meaning nowadays as it did when you were young, but you just kind of started taking this seriously about 7th grade. And Justin, when did you kind of get interested in sports growing up? We never really covered that with you either much.
In sports, I started wrestling when I was 4. And I was really serious about wrestling all the way up into high school, but playing football, bantam age, I can't remember how old that would be, 7, 8 years old maybe. So, but never got serious into like lifting or like, I never got serious into what it took to be good because I was naturally good because I was the biggest kid on the team, stronger than everybody else because we were kids and I was just purely bigger than everybody.
Yeah, obviously helps.
Right.
So you get through and you start having this obvious affinity to lifting. So whenever when did you get bit by the powerlifting bug? I mean, I know that you're training now and you're getting in good shape, and obviously the eyes are starting to notice, your friends are noticing, people are making comments. When did you actually look to powerlifting specifically?
So I don't think I actually got into powerlifting until maybe like my senior year of high school, and I use the term got into very loosely because I don't remember for sure.
Yeah.
But it was either, graduating high school or very early years in college. We had a garage gym at the town over from where I grew up, and a lot of my buddies that were older than me were all into powerlifting, and I was like, I want to be strong like them, so I guess that's kind of where the bug kind of bit me. Like that's where I got interested in it. But I never really got into the realm of like, what do I need to do to compete until I know this happened when I was in college because I met this guy, his name was Josh in Morgantown. And I saw him and a buddy of his that he was training for a powerlifting meet. And, I was about as big as I am now, how big I am, Charlie. I'm a small guy. And I walked up to these 220 plus pound guys and I was like, hey, like, can I work out with you guys? Like, I want to do that. And they just kind of took me under their wing. And that's, that was probably sophomore year of college whenever I started getting, kind of more serious into powerlifting and wanting to do something with it.
Now, did you have like a very, very natural talent towards it? Were you strong to begin with? I mean, I know you'd been training. Again, it's another term that we'll use pretty liberally because you're doing P90X, at your house. But since you've been, involved in athletic, I guess, conditioning, so to speak, since you were in 7th grade, did you notice that you were naturally strong, or did it take a lot of, obviously it takes work to get to where you wanted, but I just wondered if you knew very early on, like, hey, I'm pretty darn good at this, or if it took a long time to get to that point.
So for me, it was never kind of a realization that, like you said, quote unquote, I'm pretty darn good at this. For me, it was more so other people kind of saying, like, for as big as you are, like you're moving some, like, some good weight, you should do something with this. And it was more other people kind of, trying to nudge me in that direction. Because as I was going through high school, the guys that taught me how to lift introduced me to other people. I met a guy from Weirton, West Virginia, who, he was a competitive bodybuilder, and he kind of took me under his wing and trained me up to do a bodybuilding show my junior year. I think it was junior year of high school. And then I just continued, off of, the energy that my gym partners and my friends would give me, just from continuing to work out and push myself and try to better myself. It was more so other people telling me that I should do something with it rather than me saying, I've got a real talent here. I should see what I can do,
Now, do you think, is that predicated on humility, or is that just on the simple fact that you've never competed before, so you don't really know what's strong and what's not, because this is just as strong as you've ever been and that's all you've ever known? So when you have people saying these things, it's like, oh, I didn't know that this was good. I just guess that I've always been this strong then, or whatever.
I think it's a little bit of both. For me, I don't think of myself in any sense of the word as being an abnormal or above average human being. So when other people tell me, the things that I'm doing, with powerlifting or, weightlifting, or the things that I'm doing for whatever training I'm doing, for them to, go out of their way to compliment me or be like, you're really good at this. Can you help me with, X, Y, or Z? To me, it's just like, in my mind, I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of doing what I know and trying to do it to the best of my ability. But I don't think of myself as, I'm on this pedestal where the top tier guys are or the pro athletes are. In my mind, I'm always just, that average kid from small town West Virginia who, just enjoys working out. And I guess it's, just kind of built from that. Like, I never think, whenever people tell me the things that I'm doing is, great or incredible or anything like that, that it's anything out of the ordinary. That's just, it's just me trying to do what I can do.
And as long as I've known you, you've been like that, man. Like I even like little things, like on a daily Snapchat conversation where you'll post these videos of the things that you're doing, where you're doing, 100 pull-ups and, 50 hanging leg raises. And then you're doing supersetting it with 10 muscle ups and running with the sandbag and squatting a million times. And I'll make comments to you like, dude, that's inhuman. I don't know how you do that. And you just kind of brush it off, very professionally and very humbly, and just say, hey, yeah, I just got a body. The thing you said to me the other day that kind of resonated with me was, you said, I just got a body and I just want to see what it can do, or something along those lines. I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but I thought that was kind of interesting because you've dabbled in all these different things. Like, you've kind of had a little bit of a bodybuilding background because you've competed in a show before. You've done the powerlifting thing. Obviously, you have a sports background from a younger age, and then now you're kind of transitioning into more just a challenging type of physical endeavors, so to speak, which we'll touch on in a little bit. And I think that everybody, at least at some point, goes through that. Not that you've had it, because this is more short term and acute versus long term, which is what your situation is. But I see a lot of times that people kind of have like short term ADHD when it comes to how they want to push themselves and what direction they want to take things in. Like, Justin, I mean, you can kind of speak to that firsthand, especially with, the triathlon training and balancing that with the strength training component too. You've kind of went through that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I would say short-term ADHD when it comes to training, I am on that train every day because I haven't been able to do it for very long. I just recently have got to a physical shape where I can train. So now I want to do it all.
And
You
I
know,
remember, I mean, you and I have had these conversations a million times where, sometimes Justin will have, I don't want to say necessarily conflicting goals, because all physical fitness goals are kind of overlapped where some of the skill sets run into the others a little bit. There's definitely some parallelism there, but he would kind of have things that couldn't really coexist if he wanted to take them optimally to the next level, like where you were focused so long on getting strong, and then you were also so focused on running your triathlons, which was making you burn an exorbitant amount of calories, and training frequency and volume were super, super high with running and biking and swimming, that the weight training kind of had to take a back seat for a little bit. And I remember telling you, hey, dude, you just got to focus on what you want most right now. Like, obviously, you want to be strong, you want to be ripped, you want to be big, you want to be, have endurance, you want to be healthy, you want to have all these items. Which one of these, or which of these two or three things mean the most to you? And that's kind of the train you need to follow there.
right. Yep.
And I think that with, like, I don't want to put words in your mouth or thoughts in your head there, Josh, but like, I feel like you are one of those people where you've done a really good job of that, just because everything that you've done so far has always been 100% as long as I've known you. Like, I don't think I've ever seen you do something that isn't 100%.
Yeah, and that's, I credit that to my parents too, and that the way that I was raised, it was always, if you're going to do something, do it right and do it with all your heart, or don't do it at all. And I kind of tried to, throughout, my adolescence and now adulthood, I tried to take that and apply it to, every facet of my life, whether it was academic or physical or sports or, whatever it was. I always, if I set a goal for myself, I was determined that I was going to see it through no matter what it took. And I give all the credit to that to, again, my parents, my upbringing.
So let's take that now and run with it. We have Josh, who we've established as a very normal person. You called yourself a jack of all trades and a master of none. So eventually you became a master, for lack of a better word, because there's certainly more descriptive and I guess appropriate adjectives we could use, because you can't argue that you're one of the best powerlifters to ever live if you go by the numbers. So we have normal Josh, and now we have to get into the theme of the episode, is what does it take to be the best in the world? How does Josh go from being your average kid who kind of have this little bit of natural affinity to powerlifting according to other people? How do you take that and then transition to having the best squat of all time for your weight class? Like, that obviously doesn't happen overnight. It happens over years. What was like your training structure like? What was your nutrition like? And I don't mean specifics as far as, the volume and the frequency and all that kind of stuff, but just give us some insights into how like your training and your nutrition was kind of progressive and got you to the point where you're able to squat 600 pounds at a body weight of under 150.
Right. So for me, I guess the two things that I want to outline before I get into, the how I did what I did, is that whatever goal you're pursuing, whether it's academic, whether it's physical, whether it's, in your career or what you want to do with your future, the only things that you need to have, which is what I applied to the things that I did, with all my accolades of physicality, is focus and commitment. Whenever I set out to do what I did with powerlifting, I knew from the start what I wanted to do. I didn't set, a very broad and far-reaching goal of, I want to be one of the strongest guys on the planet, or I want to be, one of the strongest guys at 148, or I want to, anything like that, because that's, if you set it on a table and look at it, that's a very broad statement. That doesn't give you any kind of long-term or short-term, for that matter, goals to strive for, to kind of track to see if you're on the right path.
Well, I'm sure that when you first started, people probably, if you would have said to those guys that you started training with that kind of took you under their wing, if you would have said to them initially, hey, I want to be one of the best powerlifters on the planet, they'd probably laugh at you. because I kind
Right,
of
because
thought the same thing.
everybody says that.
I had this mindset growing up that like I wanted to be a bodybuilder, and I was really skinny when I first started kind of getting interested in that. And I remember specifically in high school, early on in high school, before I really got into strength training, when I just kind of thought it'd be cool to get into and be a bodybuilder. I remember people would say like, "You're too skinny to be a bodybuilder." It's like, well, I'm not going to stay skinny forever, but I couldn't set that big goal of I want to be a competitive bodybuilder because I wasn't even really into lifting that point. And Justin, I'm sure you kind of had the same thing too.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, you said that, and I was thinking in my head, as a kid, I always said I wanted to be a firefighter, and through what Josh said, focus and commitment, I lost 220 pounds in a year, and now I'm a firefighter. So I love that focus and commitment. That's awesome.
And they're very simple adjectives, but very few people, I think, actually take the time to follow through with them, because you can say that you're committed, and you can say that you're focused, but realistically, I mean, we always preach the importance of balance, but there are times if you're trying to be the best in the world where you can't really have a lot of balance. And Josh, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, because you're obviously very well rounded and you have a lot of things going for you. When you were in the thick of the powerlifting thing, as you started becoming the best in the world, did you start to lose a sense of balance? Is that eventually why you kind of got out of it a little bit?
Honestly, no. And before I delve into that, I want to, just pause for a second to say, Justin, congratulations on that, everything with the firefighter, because to me, in my mind, that's not a goal to just kind of gloss over, mention in passing and be done with. What it sounds like what you accomplished over the course of a year is incredible. And I don't want that to go unnoticed. That's amazing, man.
I appreciate that, and it's really hard for me to see it sometimes. But Charlie does a really good job at reminding me. My wife does a really good job at reminding me on a daily basis of where I'm at, because to me, I'm still the biggest guy in the room. I still turn sideways when I walk past people because I feel like I take up the most space of anybody in the world. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, of course, man. And Charlie, to answer your question, I feel like this is one of the areas where I am very abnormal. Not to say, I have this trait that's, puts me above anybody else, because by no means does it. But I don't think I ever really lost or had a feeling that I was losing, my sense of control over everything else that was going on in my life whenever I was pursuing what I was pursuing with powerlifting. But the way that I, accomplished what I accomplished was very, not by the books, for lack of a better way to put it. So what I mean by that is, when I was competing, I was, active in college, studying engineering, which is a very, it's a very, what's the word I want to use? A very demanding, major. You spending late hours at the library, early mornings for class, and then finding time to still get to the gym and train and, go get groceries, cook food, pack food, all those things I'm sure you guys are all, well accustomed to. If you lose track of any one of those things, then everything kind of falls apart. So for me,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's kind of like, I think it's analogous to like a Jenga table, or a tower. If you pull one of those little blocks that's supporting it, the whole thing crumbles down.
Right, like the crisis that we're in.
Yeah.
Pull one of the blocks.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good way to put it. So I feel like, even though you're hyper focused on this one, direction that you're trying to go with, this goal that you're trying to achieve, that doesn't mean that you drop everything else that's going on in your life and you only focus on that, because, that's first and foremost, that's not realistic. You can't put everything else in your life, with your family, your friends, your career, what you're doing with school. You can't just put everything else on pause and say, I'm doing this and only this right now. Unless you're, the 1% of the planet that's sponsored by, XYZ fitness company and they're paying you to do it.
Yeah.
That's, that's the only, fairy tale, way that you'd be able to do it. So for me, I'm going to, backtrack to the focus and commitment thing that I mentioned earlier. I never really lost focus on what I wanted to do. And I knew that I needed to stay committed to everything that I was doing at the time. So school, homework, time in the gym, time at the grocery store to get the right kind of food, time to prepare food, and time to plan out, days, weeks in advance of what I was going to do, where I was going to be, and how I was going to do it. Because if I didn't do that, I never would have accomplished what I did. If I would have just fallen off track and, I guess kind of panicked probably if all the wheels started falling off the wagon. And, it's hard to get things back together after they've fallen apart if you, don't keep a good handle on them from the beginning and keep them from falling apart.
And as long as I've known you, dude, I can say that you've always been very cerebral. And I think that your approach to how analytical and how like planning oriented you are probably did a lot for you, because if you're the type of person who wants to be good at multiple things, and Justin, myself, and you, Josh, we can all attest to this, is we all have a lot going on in our lives, and we're not unique in that sense. I mean, everybody has a ton of stuff that they're dealing with. Well, if you want to be good at kind of everything you're doing, it takes so much planning and so much precision. Like, for example, if you only have X amount of hours in the gym, because that's the only time that you're allocated to work out because you have a job and you have a wife and you have kids and you have all this stuff, you have to make sure that the quality of that 45 minutes or an hour, whatever time you have at your disposal, that hour has to be used perfectly. You have to optimize every minute that you're in the gym. And then it's the same thing likewise with school. If you have 2 hours a night that you have dedicated and set aside for studying, those have to be the most productive 2 hours. And as long as I've known you, you've always been very good at planning, in my estimation, Josh. And then you've also been someone who, like I said earlier, I feel like you take everything so seriously. Like, I've never seen you do anything and not go all out in it. It just doesn't seem like it's in your nature at all.
Yeah, I think I can operate on both ends of that spectrum, because everything that requires a kind of seriousness to it, I guess, I feel like you're absolutely right. Like I'm very hyper serious, I guess, about the things that I, am passionate about and the things that I'm doing. But on the other side of that, there's also, and friends that I've trained with in the gym can attest to this. Like, I'll go into the gym some days and just be like, let's just, flip tires all day, or let's see how many pull-ups we can do, or do, something outside of the structure, of what we are training for, or anything like that. Just to, keep things lively and, fun.
I think that you and Justin would get along so well, because you
That's
both are into like this. I've always been the opposite, where, I have the programming that I have, or the certain like mesocycle, or whatever my training is looking like for that particular day. That's what I do. I typically don't variate from it. If there's a time when someone wants to like say, hey, do you want to train arms with me? Yeah, I'll train arms with you, and I'll kind of go off the book, so to speak. But generally speaking, I'm always like very, very regimented. I don't like variation much. And Justin, because I've trained with Justin for a while now, where he's the type of person that just loves to do like random challenges. Like, hey, I saw this challenge on YouTube. It sounds terrible. I'm probably going to puke, and I'm probably going to hate my life. So, Charlie, let's do this. And I find myself succumbing to that temptation, unfortunately, more often than I'd like to.
I think that started my 10 sets of 10 random pin. It was like the CT Fletcher thing.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's terrible, but we got to do it now because it's amazing.
And I have to tell, I think this is probably a good point in the interview process or the podcast to tell this. So I want to give you guys a little bit of insight on what it's like to train with one of the best in the world from my point of view, and not from Josh's point of view, because he lets his overwhelming sense of humility take over and not give a true picture of how hard he works. So Josh and I went to Rocky Road Gym down in Steubenville, Ohio one time. And Josh, is Rocky Road closed now? Did Chuck end up selling that place? Is it there anymore?
To the best of my knowledge, I think it's still open. I think Chuck sold it, but I think whoever bought it still has it, open and operating. Cause I have some friends that, still post pictures and stuff there. So to the best of my knowledge, it's still open.
Gotcha. So this gym, Rocky Road, is in the Ohio Valley, just, a town down in the northeastern part of Ohio. kind of by the panhandle of West Virginia there. And it's really a hole in the wall. It's a very hardcore atmosphere. The equipment is all top end powerlifting. It's geared towards like fighters, wrestlers, powerlifters, people who take training very, very hardcore. It's a very old school type of atmosphere in there. And Josh and I went down there for a squat workout. And we actually used the monolift to squat, which was the first time I'd used it. Memory serves, I think we were walking out our squats, though. We weren't actually using the monolift as a monolift. But Josh and I were doing the squat workout, and we decided to just work heavy, just do lower reps and just see how high we could get our squats. So I remember that as we're training, we were gradually increasing load, which it would be typical of anybody training, especially if you're a strength or training specifically for strength. So, but the increments were so small. So we were doing like doubles at like 185 and then doubles at 205 and then doubles at 225 and then, you know, triples at 275 and then 300 and then 315 and then 345 and then 365 and 385. And this like continued. So we're doing, you know, granted we're doing 2 or 3 reps, you know, doubles or triples, sometimes occasionally singles when we got really heavy, but the volume kind of adds up. I mean, you're only doing 2 or 3 reps at a time, but if you're doing 15, 20, 25 sets by the time that I think I eventually tapped out probably around mid to low 4s, maybe 430. And I think, Josh, you worked up to over 5 that day, if I recall correctly. And it was terrible. You know, I was sore, I was beat up, I was just toast. And I'm thinking, oh man, this was an awesome workout, because we squatted for probably up to like an hour at least at that point. And that's not counting warming up and all that stuff. We're just literally in the squat rack or in the monolift for over an hour. And we get done. And then I remember Josh says to me, he goes, hey, do you want to do a little volume work on the squat now? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. Now, me thinking volume work, I'm thinking, okay, well, we've been doing singles, doubles, and triples. You know, we're doing sets of 1, 2, or 3. So if he says volume work, that means like sets of 6 to 8. And he goes, yeah, he's like, let's throw on 225. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I could do, you know, 225 for some volume. I could do 225 for 10 right now. I mean, my legs are beat up, but I could still squeak out double digits with 225 or whatever. It's not going to be that hard. He throws on 225, and then Josh proceeds to tell me that we're going to do it for 100 reps. And of course, I look at him and say, I can't do 100 reps. What am I going to do? He said, oh, you're going to do 100 reps. You're just going to rest pause it. He said, so what you'll do is you'll go as many as you can till failure and then rack it. And then as soon as you're done, I'll hop on real fast and I'll do it till failure and then rack it. And then you'll do it till failure and we'll just go till we get 100. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. So Josh, needless to say, finished his 100 reps much quicker before I did. My plan was to do 10 sets of 10, which lasted 2 sets. And then I was doing a set of 5 and then a set of 3. And then I'm basically working my way up with singles and doubles until I got 100. By the end of it, we had squatted for over 2 hours. My spinal erectors, like my lower back, was so fried, I literally couldn't walk. Like I had to lay down, and even lying down in certain positions was not helping. There was nothing I could do to get the pump and the pain out of my back. My legs were shaky. So I go outside to throw up. So I'm outside of the gym, which has like a garage door opening, and I'm puking my brains out. And I'm like just completely draped over this tire that's sitting outside in the parking lot, this big tire that they flip or hit with a sledgehammer or whatever crazy stuff you guys do with it. And I'm draped over the tire, sweating profusely, vomit in my mouth and dripping down my face. And I had no shirt on at the time because, again, I thought I was going to die. And a few of Josh's buddies were out there doing sled pulls. So they were doing like where they have the belt hooked up to the sled and they're sprinting with it and dragging it. And Josh says, hey, do you want to do some of these? I said, Josh, I literally cannot walk. Like, you don't understand. Like, I physically, it's not that I don't want to. It's not that I'm mentally quitting. Physically, my body is so exhausted, I cannot walk and stand up. And needless to say, he let me throw up and rest for a little bit longer. And then before I knew it, we were doing sled drags up and down the parking lot.
Yeah.
So that's just one instance. And I just think that, and again, I'm not even doing the story justice of how terrible it was, but I just want everybody to kind of understand that, like, you may have this view of certain people that have accomplished great things and think like, oh, they're just very gifted, or sometimes it's about luck or being in the right place at the right time. And while, again, part of it is having a good support system, like, if you want to be the best in the world, it's something you have to work tirelessly. and seeing the training that Josh would do firsthand and going through it with him on a couple occasions, it was just like unbelievable that this kid can do this. You know, not only from the physical standpoint, of course, but then from the mental standpoint, that he has the fortitude and the capacity to like not only do this once, because dude, my legs and my back were shot for like a week or two, you know, but for him to come back to the gym the next day and, you know, do some pressing or bench day or whatever, you know, type of training program he was on at the time, just to continue to put your body through that over and over again and to continue to go back for more. It's unreal. So that is my training with Josh story. So all of you out there that think you want to be the best in the world and think you can train and do what it takes, I'm telling you, it is otherworldly. It's specifically coming from me, who I think that I train pretty hard most of the time.
Sign me up. I want to come do some of this stuff.
I feel like Justin and I would have a pretty good time doing some of these crazy workouts together.
So I don't want to just gloss over the powerlifting thing because it's such a huge, you know, component of who you are and everything you've ever done. But you've kind of grown and developed physically into doing so much more than just being a big, strong meathead in the gym. So I don't want to, you know, kind of make it sound like you're just some grunt that squats a lot of weight. But to finalize the whole powerlifting thing for now, what do you think, in your estimation, was your best accomplishment and your happiest moment in powerlifting?
But, you know, bar none, it was whenever I finally got the credit for, you know, way back when we, you know, began this conversation, the podcast, I mentioned, you know, setting a very precise and direct goal rather than a broad goal.
Yep.
And the only goal that I set with powerlifting was I want to break the all-time world record squat, you know, drug-free at 148. That was the only thing I wanted to do with powerlifting. And, you know, I got, you know, pretty strong, you know, just as a consequence of that being my goal. You know, obviously, you know, deadlift's going to go up, bench is going to go up. You're going to get strong if you're training for a very specific goal like that. But
yeah,
I actually, you know, I had done 3 meets and I broke the record unofficially in all of them. And the first one, you know, I requested that they bring a drug test because they didn't, I guess, you know, I didn't know how they operated. It was the first one I ever did. And they didn't bring one. So I was like, okay, you know, I did it. I know in my head I did it, but I'm not going to get the credit for it.
Yeah.
So then, you know, take 2, I trained for another powerlifting meet. I don't remember if it was either that winter or the winter after the summer that I had first competed. And I broke it again. And you know, the guy I mentioned earlier, Josh, he was the one putting on the meet. And I was like, hey man, like, I really want to get the credit for this record. Can you make sure they bring a drug test? And he's like, yeah, man, I got you. Like, we'll make sure everything's there and in place. So I did it again, broke the record in the meet, you know, took the test, whatever. And then whoever the president of the IPA, I think, was one of the ones that was there that took it, you know, to make sure, you know, the lab results or everything was good, and they lost it. So I was, you know, at this point I'm getting kind of demoralized because I'm like, Jesus, I've done this twice, you know, and still haven't gotten the credit. Like, maybe I should just throw in the towel with it. And then
I got to interrupt you too, Josh, just to kind of give some context here. Someone like myself who has done powerlifting meets before, and I am by no means any good. I just do them for fun in the off season occasionally. People have to understand too that just because you break a world record in a meet doesn't mean that you continue to, like, it's hard to put this into words, but you don't stay that strong all the time. Like, there's very specific and precise peaking that goes into this. It's not like, hey, I broke the all-time world squat record this week, but they didn't have the drug test, so I could just do it next weekend at a meet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's, you know, there's a lot of training, a lot of time, and a lot of, you know, sacrifice that goes into, you know, performing at that kind of level. And again, I don't want, you know, anyone that's listening to this to think I'm, you know, some kind of superhero or abnormal person or anything. Like, I'm just, you know, average Josh from small town West Virginia. But yeah, you know, after the second time, whenever I, you know, broke the record in the meet and, you know, still didn't get the drug test ironed out, I was, you know, getting kind of demoralized because I was like, man, I'm putting in all this work for this goal that I really want to accomplish, and I'm doing everything right, but the, you know, the factors that are out of my hand, you know, keep going wrong. So I kind of like took some time off. I think I might have took a year off and just kind of lifted and kind of got strong. And then it started coming back, and I was like, you know what? I want to go for this one more time. Like, I know I can do it. I've done it before. I want to go and try and break this again. So I went and competed in a different federation. And I told the meet director beforehand, I was like, hey, like, here's my situation. Like, I've done this twice before. Both times I kind of, got, for lack of a better way to say it, screwed, to get the, on the books for this record. And I've been working at this for a really long time. Can you please make sure that, all the pieces are in place so that I can, make sure everything's ironed out before this meet even starts, so that I know if I do it again in this meet that I'll get the credit for it. And the guys, yeah, I got you. We'll make sure everything's ironed out. So I go, long story short, go compete, break it again on video, all that. Take the drug test, pass the drug test, posted the results. I think I posted them on like Facebook or somewhere. So just so that everybody could see that, like, I actually did take the drug test and pass it and was clean. Because that was a very important thing to me. I had people, whenever I first started working out and getting into high school, that always, were thinking I was, taking stuff or supplementing, with stuff that you shouldn't be using, which I will go on the books and the records of saying I never have. I have the drug test to prove that I never have. And I want people to know that you don't need that kind of stuff to compete at a, quote unquote elite level for anything. But yeah, that's, from coming from a state of demoralization of, I've done this twice and I still haven't gotten it, to kind of having to pick myself up and be like, you know what, you set out to do this. Your parents taught you to do something wholeheartedly or don't do it at all. Go do it one more time and get it done. And that's just kind of what happened.
Awesome. Incredible.
That is awesome.
I think that hopefully the majority of our listeners here understand, because we do attract some non-lifters too, just fitness people in general, and even non-fitness people kind of constitute our listenership here. But I hope that they understand how unbelievable squatting almost 600 pounds at 148 is. Like, that's mind blowing. And then can you touch on too, you totaled elite, your highest total at 148 was 1470. Can you kind of go into what elite status means and what the 1,470 pounds represents, and kind of just give some insights into the ins and outs of powerlifting there for our non-powerlifting fans?
So I absolutely can, but I probably can't correctly. Meaning that I'm not someone who knows every aspect of the sport. A lot of my buddies that still do it today know so much more than I do, and they're way more knowledgeable than I. But yeah, I think as far as the, elite title or anything like that goes, I think for each weight class and division, there's a particular like benchmark. I think it's just based on your total. So if you hit a total of X at Y weight, then you're considered quote unquote elite in the world, or you can compete professionally in this and that. And for me, like, I guess like a sub goal that I had, I took a lot of inspiration from I'm not sure if he's still with Animal or not, but the athlete Richard Hawthorne, who, he's 132 guy and he deadlifts like 600-700 pounds. Dude's insane. And, I was like, I want to be like him. I want to be able to lift, 10 times my body weight, because this guy's an absolute animal. And, with the total that I got, what did you say, 1470, I think is what my best was in the meet. For all three meets that I did, I actually weighed in officially on the books for each of them at 146. So I would cut the weight the night before and go to bed thinking I was good, because I'd go to bed at 148. And then, the wrestler in me should have known this. I'd floated, another 2 pounds overnight. So I woke up and I'm like, good God, like I overshot this so much. Now I got to put, try and rehydrate, put all this weight back on. But so that 1470, total at 146 actually considered, I don't know what like the Wilks or any of that is, but if you just divide the numbers out, it equates to 10 times, total my body weight, ability to lift. And that was something that, that was special to me.
It's unreal.
Really, yeah, I'd say it's special.
So
that's
now
awesome.
you're in the gym PRs. And just to provide one last little bit of context there before we move on, and I mentioned this earlier, but that 1,470 pounds, just so our listeners know, that's only 3 lifts. That's a bench, a squat, a deadlift. You put them together, and he's over 1,400 pounds just in those three. So moving on, you're in the gym PRs. So the best you've ever squatted in the gym was 625. The best you've ever benched in the gym was a 380. And the best you've ever deadlifted in the gym was 590. So looking at those numbers, where are you about weight for those? Like, was it, you mentioned that you cut, and obviously you're pretty skilled at it from your wrestling background. How much did you weigh when you hit some of those in the gym PRs? Were you much over 148 walking around? I mean, I would say you're probably in the off season, having known you back then, probably not much more than 160, right? If that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of a blessing and a curse in that, every guy that starts working out wants to, I want to be big, I want to be this, be that, have big muscles. And for me, that's always been really challenging because I don't put on weight very well.
Uh-huh.
Whenever I walk around, whether I'm working out very, hard and persistently every day, or, in a case like right now where all I can do is kind of run and hope to do some pull-ups at a local park, where I'm not working out a whole lot. I don't typically get over 165, even if I'm, sitting on the couch being lazy, or if I'm busting my butt in the gym. So I'll walk around typically between, 158 to 165 off season. And that's just where my body finds homeostasis. I guess it doesn't want to change from that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say, for all those gym PR lifts, I was probably around probably like 160, maybe 162.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Yeah, I figured you were around there. I wasn't sure if you were at 160 or not, just because, like you said, you're a shorter guy. In your frame, and I think that's what's even more impressive is when you see a lot of these elite powerlifters, they have such big frames, and it's not just the muscle and the weight that they have, but just the bone structure, like the wide shoulders to be able to bench so much. And some of their leverages are so good. You look like you have pretty good leverages, but you're, like you said, you're not like an overbearingly huge guy.
Right. Yeah. And I think, whenever people have approached me in the gym, whether it was, while I was in college or even now, people will, come up to me and recognize me and, hey, can you give me some pointers on this or that? And I'm always trying to, stress to them, learn your leverages and use your leverages, because that is, at least with powerlifting, it is such, a glossed over part of the sport, but it's so important that you understand and learn how to use your own body's leverages. Because I know so many guys that go and, I think the flagship lifter for the sumo deadlift is, Dan Green. He's out super wide. His toes might be touching, the bar, the plates, and he's just racking out hundreds of pounds on it for reps, and guys think, I can just go set up, do exactly what he's doing, watch a video of how he does it, and then I'll be able to do that. And I try to stress to people that is not at all, how it works. Everybody's different. And, just to talk about hip mobility, like your hip mobility is not going to be anywhere near what his is, or it may be, way beyond what his is, but you have to experiment with it and, learn what's comfortable for you and where you're strong. And so I try to really teach people that whenever I'm working with anybody.
And Justin kind of gave me a lot of insights with that sort of thing, with like the endurance sports, about like running and because Justin, I remember the one time you and I were speaking and you talked about how you hate going downhill. And I thought,
Yes.
why would you hate going downhill? It's easy. You get to coast, it's not that bad. And then, I mean, you can give some insights now about it, just about like your gait and how, running and tracking your steps and stuff is so different uphill versus downhill. And every other person is different too.
Yeah, like with me, because I'm running it still. It's a big frame and big weight, a high weight. That running downhill to me is difficult because I can't just throw it into neutral and roll like you said. A lot of guys can, but I can't. I find it easier to run uphill. It's harder, but it's easier. It's easier on my body because I can control my gait, like you said, and control my form, and have a smoother run gait, which feels better.
Yeah, I kind of went
So,
through a similar type of instance with squatting specifically, which is a little bit more close to what Josh is talking about. Obviously, like I always had weak hips and weak hamstrings. And so naturally the way you're taught to fix that is go wider. and I would try to vary my stance so much, and get wider with different techniques, and I could not do it. Like, and it wasn't necessarily a case of, oh, I'm weak. It was an instance of I'm getting hurt. Like, my hips hurt when I do this. Long story short, I was working with a chiropractor and a movement specialist who was like, dude, he said, your hips are extremely narrow. And you basically told me I don't have good hips and I need to squat closely. And I said, well, that's always felt comfortable for me. And I've always liked squatting closely, but I just felt like obligated by seeing what perfect technique should be on a squat. And I'm not talking from a depth perspective or necessarily a form perspective, but I'm just talking about like, where your feet are set up and how you, kind of like the example that Josh used with like a conventional deadlift versus a sumo deadlift, and where to place your feet and how wide and stuff. When I was doing my squat, I was always looking at what would be optimal for a human performance perspective, but I, have to understand, well, that's not necessarily optimal for my hip structure. So I kind of went through that a lot. And I think I'm glad that you said that, Josh, about how important that is for powerlifting, because it's such a technique driven sport. Like, you could be incredibly strong in the lower body and not squat jack, like, at all. You could be terribly weak in the squat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that, the sport of powerlifting gets kind of, from people that don't know much about it, it gets kind of shed in a negative light because they think, it's just a bunch of, brutes going up and throwing around weight, and, you just got to be strong and that's all there is to it. But it's so much more technical than that. And, I learned that very quickly because, as an outsider, before I started getting into it, that's what I thought too. I was like, you just got to be a big, strong guy and go throw weight around. And then as I got into it and got deeper into it and got more serious with it, I was like, there's a level of complexity here that, is unforeseen to the naked eye, and you don't really experience that until you get into it.
Well, especially when you're going at the level that you're at, like, the separation of those lifts is so minor. Like, you're talking like fractions of a millimeter off in your groove on the squat, and you're dropping. Now it's a little bit different with you because you're for the most part you're raw with your training, which means that you don't use any equipment like bench shirts and squat suits and stuff. But especially with those equipped guys, some of their lifting, it can be just like the fraction. It could be like a hair's diameter, and they're missing the lift or they're getting the lift based on whether they were in that groove or not. Like, it's so highly technical, and I don't think that people understand that.
Yeah, and I had, in reference to Josh, the guy that I met who was training that one guy when I first got into powerlifting, and a couple of my buddies that still compete to this day have, they've experimented with, equipped versus unequipped, and just seeing the way that they train. And like you just mentioned, like the most minor or minute, shift in either, an angle that you're moving the bar or moving your arm or your leg or anything like that. If you come down at just a fraction of a degree off of, what's normal for your training, you completely miss the lift. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I never really had much interest in using a squat suit or a shirt. So I just, I've witnessed guys do it, but I've never felt it, on my own. But for them, seeing it firsthand and them telling me from their perspective what it's like, it's like night and day the way they describe it. And it's crazy how such a small, thing can have such a huge impact.
Now, every time that we do an interview with someone, Josh, we always ask them a question. This is kind of a tradition that Justin came up with. Now, the podcast is obviously the Chasing Dreams podcast, and we kind of want to bring everything full circle. The thing that I've always said about the podcast is, it has some very, very heavy fitness undertones with it, but it's also just about self-improvement, self-mastery, and chasing your dreams and accomplishing them in general. So Justin came up with these series of questions, or question. It's kind of like a singular cluster that he asks every single interview that we do, just to kind of relate it back to the topic. So Justin, you want to go ahead with those for Josh here?
Yeah, we can get after it here. So, basically, here it is. It's, what does the phrase "chasing dreams" mean to you? And do you feel as though you have chased your dreams thus far? And how do you continue how do you plan to continue chasing your dreams and helping others do the same?
I guess for me, the phrase chasing dreams, the best way I can put it is people think of, their dreams as being this destination goal. And once I get here, I'll be satisfied and life will be great, or, this or that. And for me, the term, chasing dreams is to constantly be trying to raise the bar and never being satisfied with, the things that you've done or the things that you've accomplished. Being proud of what you've done for sure, but never being satisfied, because I think once you reach a state of satisfaction, you quit trying to challenge yourself and you kind of stagnate, and your life kind of loses, not necessarily purpose, but you lose drive for the things that you want to do out of your life. So for me, chasing dreams means constantly raising the bar and trying to see, once I've accomplished X, what can I do next? What can I do next, either in my career, with my body, with fitness, with whatever it is. It's constantly a state of raising the bar. And, to relate back to the second part of the question, I think, yes, I have, chased my dreams to a degree. But the flip side of that coin is that my dreams are never, set in stone. So they change all the time. So my dream, when we began talking about this podcast, about the powerlifting stuff, was, I wanted to break this world record, which was, a very far-reaching goal and was going to take a lot of time and dedication to do. But once I accomplished it, I wasn't, all right, I finally made it. Like, I did what I wanted to do, and now I'm good and I can just kind of coast. From there, it stemmed, okay, I've accomplished this, far-reaching goal. What can I do next? What's my next dream? And that's, to tie it all together, I think that's what the phrase, chasing dreams means to me. It's constantly being hungry for the next best thing, and finding ways, to challenge yourself and to challenge others, to, bring them up to the level that you're on, and try and, not necessarily inspire other people, but to try and push them to be their best selves too. It's not just trying to be, the best person that I can be. I want everybody that's around me to be, constantly trying to better themselves as well.
What's that saying? The high tide rises or raises all ships, I think. Something like that. So basically the premise there is, if you're having success and trying to do good things in your life, and the people that you surround yourself with will ultimately have that success too, as long as you guys are all on the same page.
Yes.
All right, man. We appreciate you joining us today. Before we kind of peace out here, let's give a little social media plug. If people want to get a hold of you and ask for training advice, or potentially look into coaching, or, just kind of get to know you a little bit better, where can they find you? Where do they locate the infamous Josh?
Infamous. I'm always on Instagram and Snapchat. My Instagram tag is Josh_Marosi, Marosi 25. My Snapchat, I don't know off the top of my head. It's let me look. It's J Marosi 25. So, if anybody has questions or wants to connect with me there, more than happy to accept any invites, or, answer any questions you guys might have. And I want to take a minute to thank both Charlie and Justin for having me on today, guys. It's, for me, it's a real honor to be invited to be on your podcast, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
We'll have to do it again sometime too, because there's a lot more to cover that we never, any guest we never get to cover everything we want to. So I think I can speak for Justin when I say that we'd like to have you back on at some point too.
Yeah, for sure. I got a lot of questions.
Oh, for sure. No doubt.
All
All
right,
right,
everybody.
everybody. So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast, episode 21. So for Justin and world champion powerlifter Josh Marosi, I am Charlie, and we are out. We will see you guys next week.